patrons?
What's up, patrons?
Welcome to
I'm
our
in the
spookiness.
and I am in the Great White North, which I don't know. You don't hear a lot about Canadian ghosts, I feel like. Do you? I don't know. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody being like, because I feel like they would be very polite.
I do not think that I'm aware of any Canadian ghosts, no.
Hmm. Well, isn't Dan Aykroyd Canadian? He studies
Uh
ghosts.
yeah, there you go.
He studies them, but he is not one himself.
He's not
Hmm.
Canadian.
No, he's a Canadian. I don't think he's a ghost, but maybe the reverse is true. I'm not quite sure.
He's a ghost, but not a Canadian ghost.
Let's see. Canadian ghosts. There are some. There's the
Okay.
Baldoon mystery. There's the
Ooh,
headless nun. Ooh, there's the white lady. There are, according to Wikipedia, there are one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight Canadian ghosts.
that's not very many, considering I
Um,
believe that more than 8 people have lived in Canada.
no, I agree with that. There's the Dungervon Whooper. Ooh, let's see what this white lady's all about. Just like a woman mad at a coffee shop.
Is it Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Well, she's from Georgia, so, but she would be
She
spooky.
she would be
She's too
spooky.
scary. Let's see.
She's
Okay, so white lady is a type of female ghost. She is typically dressed in white dress. Okay, so this is like a common version of this. Canada. Okay, white lady's called Dames Blanches in French. I can't speak French. A popular legend claims surrounding Montgomery on Montmorency Falls near Quebec City, haunted by a white lady. It said the spirit of a young French Canadian woman whose fiance was killed while fighting against the British in the Battle of Beauport. The young couple allegedly used to meet near the top of the falls. Accordingly, the grieving woman is said to have chosen the site to end her life by throwing herself into the raging waters while wearing the wedding dress that she had recently ordered to be made. A smaller waterfall in the vicinity now bears the name Chute de la Dame Blanche, which is the White Lady waterfall in reference to this legend. Canadian ghosts.
all right. Very good. Maybe we should include that part of this.
Yeah, we don't have to.
It's not
Bless
terribly
you.
long.
I'm sorry, you don't like that. Nothing happens when you die. I panicked. Sorry.
That was great. That was great. All right. So, for reasons that make no sense to anybody, my audio is not showing up. So give me a second. Just figure this
That's
out.
fun. It
Why are
sounds good on my
you
end.
the way you are, you dirty
Why are
hippie?
you do that?
Oh, now it starts to work. After I did literally all I did was try every channel and then start with the original channel, and now all of a sudden it seems like it's working again. Okay.
Weird.
Guess I can't complain too much.
I mean, you sound silky smooth on my end.
Sultry and smoky.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Like a perfect smoky eye makeup, but for voices.
Nice. Dab, 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 dab.
Dip, dip, dip.
Okay. Oh, you know what? I showed you No, you weren't the one. You saw both of the Nate Bargatze Washington's Dream sketches on SNL.
Yes, 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 yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. I did. We watched the second one together last week.
Okay. Sweet. Yeah. Fuck, it's so funny.
Dude, we'll have a word for numbers. Well, will be a dozen. Will there be any other words? No, just that one.
And then like kids will start school, and then after their first year of school they will be in first grade,
Uh-huh.
and they will
They'll start school. They'll be kindergarten, and they will then their second year, first grade.
that's right. And they'll complete 12 grades. So a dozen grades. No, that's no,
That's not
not
how that
like
works.
that's not how that works.
But what is in a hot dog? Get out.
Get out of the boat.
Get out the boat. Americans don't want to know. Real, true Americans don't want to know what's in their hot dogs.
Exactly. All right. Ready to this?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. And three, two, one, go. Welcome to Why We Do What We Do. I am your haunted host, Abraham.
Ooh, and I'm your spooky host, Shane. I'm your
Great.
clean sheets host, Shane. We'll
There
go
you
with
go.
that one.
Okay. We are a psychology podcast. We talk about all of the things that people do. And in the month of October, we take on some maybe spookier topics that we can sort of shoehorn into a psychology podcast, if you will. And
We
we've been
certainly
doing
do.
this for a few years, but this is our third or fourth or something like that. So it's a tradition here at Why We Do What We Do to spend all of October doing creepy psychology things.
And today is no different. We are going to be talking about the spookiest thing of all, ghosts.
They are quite spooky, quite haunting, if you will.
Ooh.
So, if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. We are so happy that you have found us. We hope that you enjoy what you hear today. And if you do and you'd like to support us, you can do that in a variety of ways. You can like and subscribe, leave a rating or a review or both. You can tell a friend. You can join us on Patreon. You can pick up some merch at our merch store, and I'll talk more about that at the end of this discussion. But if you are returning and you've been with us before and you're back for more, then thank you so much for joining us again. We hope you continue to find joy and enjoyment in what we're trying to do in our silly little psychology podcast that takes on the weird things of the world and then breaks them down into a textbook level sort of analysis, albeit with as
Yeah,
little jargon as possible.
and more fun.
Indeed. And this episode publishes just right before the end of the month. It is October 30th, so happy Halloween tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. But today is National Wicked Day, so that's fun.
True. It is also National Text Your Ex Day, I
The
guess, for those of
scariest
you.
of all.
I know. I was like, that's quite spooky.
Ooh, I don't like it. It's National Publicist Day, which is interesting.
Sure. National Candy Corn Day, which
No thanks.
take that as you will, I guess.
Yeah. I saw somebody make a candy corn dog where they
Huh.
wrapped a hot dog in candy corn and it just looks like a nightmare situation.
Ooh,
So you don't have to
yikes.
eat that. Um, it's a National Checklist Day. I am a big fan of checklists.
Yeah, checklists can be quite helpful. It is Create a Great Funeral Day. I really hope that none of you are trying to listen to this and also do that, but I guess that is a day that the funeral industry decided needed to make it onto the calendars for reasons. So, create a great funeral day.
Yeah, I guess, and also maybe a quick caveat to that is not to actively make it so a funeral is required. I think it's
True.
talking about
Good
the
point.
actual celebration being a great celebration rather than, you know,
Really good
pushing.
point.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're not going to actually make a funeral. Because you got to say it sometimes, just from liability. Like our lawyers talk to us about this a lot. We just make sure we got to be careful with that.
That's right.
It is Haunted Refrigerator Day.
Yikes. My refrigerator is haunted by the ghosts of things that I must throw away.
Or things that run.
Yeah, indeed. It is Mine Rescue Day. It's important.
That is very important. It is Pomegranate Festival. Love that.
Yum. It is Bat Appreciation Week.
It just makes me think of when what we do in the shadows. Bat. It is Henry Winkler's birthday. So happy birthday, Fonz.
Yes, if you listen, then definitely reach out to us because we love you and we think you're great, and we would be so honored to even receive an email of any sort from you,
Yes, please.
or social media post or something. Great. Anyway, it is also LGBTQ plus History Month. Great month to learn about those
Important.
things.
Important. Very, very important.
Yeah. Maybe it fits into the sort of spooky theme when we talk about how poorly treated LGBTQ plus people have been, but also don't feel like exploiting that pain of theirs. So probably not
Right.
something we'll take on as part of what we do. At least it doesn't seem that way right now. Who knows? Maybe the future will change things for us. Maybe we'll have someone come on and share their own stories. But in the meantime, we're just going to keep doing what we do, which is this fun little psychology podcast, which recounts the holidays that happen each time that we publish an episode. But as we said, we are talking about ghosts here today.
Yes, we are. So we are going to answer the questions: what are ghosts? How are ghosts? How do they work? What makes people think they have interacted with ghosts? And why have we invented ghosts?
Or we're gonna try to at least. Those were the things that seemed like good questions to try and answer, and yeah. So we got around. We're getting around to some of them in some capacity or another. Let's do our best. Let's start by defining our subject. Of course, in case you're not familiar, and good on you if you're not. Ghosts are the incorporeal apparitions of once living things that have since died. So at some point they were alive, now they're not. They are a representation of that thing that died. They may have a physical presence, such as a sound, a smell, touch. A very common one is temperature, or some combination of those things, or they may be totally imperceptible. But typically, ghosts lack the ability. Beep. Typically, ghosts lack the ability to interact with the natural world, save for these sort of sporadic, intermittent appearances or other manifestations that are barely or not at all detectable most of the time to most people.
Right. So super important to kind of like lay that groundwork, right? Interestingly, pretty much anything with mass can seemingly have a ghost. There have been stories of ghost vehicles, such as trains, planes, and automobiles, ships and motorcycles as well. There are also animals that sometimes have said to have ghosts. Even buildings have sometimes had ghosts in stories. And there's also a ghost writer of all things.
Yes,
Ooh.
Nicolas Cage.
Yes, he was.
Um, the concept of ghosts seems to have existed in pretty much every culture throughout history where we have enough evidence to have learned about some of the beliefs of those cultures. So there's probably some instances where we don't really have clear evidence of that, but we also just don't know very much about those cultures. They seem to be pretty ubiquitous throughout history. The exact understanding of what ghosts are or how they work across these cultures throughout history have ranged a variety of sort of roles that they might have had from the all the way from like the totally mundane to the terrifyingly supernatural, where ghosts are maybe something that just sort of is there and it's sort of like they ghost, and sometimes they're like demons that are trying to destroy the whole planet type things, I guess.
Yeah, there are, there's like so you'll hear stories of benevolent ghosts, like maybe just like a friend hanging out. They're just like you're just occupying their old house. And then you'll hear about like demons and exorcisms like Pazuzu and all that fun stuff, right?
Right.
So it's a blast. Now, the pervasive consistency is the idea of life continuing after death. A lot of the idea of ghosts comes from the idea that we persist well beyond our living vessels, our physical vessels.
Right.
And this can arise from two core features of human psychology. One is that we really struggle with concepts that transcend the scope of our lifespan. That is to say, the concept of being gone forever, or really any way, anything like that, or any numbers specifically, like something like that, any numbers that are outside of quantities that we could reasonably encounter and count in our lifetime, we cannot comprehend. It's nearly impossible. Infinity is too large to wrap
Yeah.
our heads around. The fact that the universe keeps expanding and the size of celestial bodies, it's too much. We can't handle it. So
Yeah.
all of the time, all of the time, this okay. Beep. So all the time, the stretches into eternity before and after our existence is entirely mystifying, if not terrifying. So one, just vast miscomprehension of the infinite world around us.
Exactly. Yeah. We struggle to comprehend concepts such as forever. and
Yeah,
indefinite and stuff like that. It seems like we say it, we know what it means, but to try and put yourself in a position of having experienced an eternity of time, we don't know how to do it because no one ever has and no one ever will.
right.
The other feature of human psychology that sort of enables this idea of ghosts is that our language really enables us to ascribe conceptual orientation to time that is not right here, right now. And we've talked about this a lot on this podcast. And what I mean by this is
Hmm.
that we can behave with respect to things that have not happened yet and may not happen for a long time or ever inside of our lifetime. And we can behave with respect to things that happened way in the past. I could learn something from a king of, the 16th century. I could try and predict or try and behave with respect to an outcome that might not be for 200 years from now by,
Right.
doing things like leaving some legacy behind or something because I'm trying to have an enduring, lasting thing. If that was something I was trying to do, which I'm not, but just to say that like we can more or less orient to time that is outside of where we currently are, and we really struggle with the concepts of forever and eternity, and also to oblivion as well.
Yeah, ooh, no thanks Oblivion, right? So with these two ingredients, we start thinking about the fact that our lives will come to an end, and and we are unable to fathom nothingness forever when we all have, and when really all we have ever known is something in an infinite amount of. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that all over again because I've stumbled
Okay.
all over that. With these two ingredients, we start thinking about the fact that our lives will come to an end and are unable to fathom nothingness forever when all we have ever known is something in a finite amount of time. So we have such a small window of existence that we can
Yeah.
comprehend, right?
Right.
Add to this the fact that we can behave with respect to the memory of people and animals after they've passed, and it is quite easy to superimpose a system of imagining that life persists after death in some form or some fashion.
But we don't take ghosts as a given. Many, many, many people no longer believe in the idea of ghosts in sort of contemporary times. There is, of course, no evidence ever in the history of humans that there have ever been ghosts, so it makes sense that we'd eventually shed this mysticism over time. But what do we know about the psychology around the beliefs in ghosts? And we will dig sort of into that psychology, but we need to do a quick, probably not quick, probably long tirade sidebar about why ghosts don't actually exist, just to make sure we're really clear on the context before we get into the psychology piece.
Yeah. So the next section we're going to talk about is this idea of why ghosts do not exist. So we don't really need to spend a lot of time on this or dwell on it. Ghosts aren't real, and we're going to unpack this in lots of ways. Let's start with first the idea of the physical part of this, right? One argument is that our bodies contain energy. We move around, we do things, we exist, and we contain energy. When we die, where does that energy go? It floats around haunting people, of course, and important, not only just haunting people, but haunting people in the clothes you die in. So you got to make sure that you
That's
dress
right.
well all the time, or you're going to be stuck in Crocs for eternity. So, which, I guess if you want to be comfortable, that's fine. No judgment there. So, so it doesn't float around. But first, a lot of that energy is essentially the mechanisms of our biology that convert resources into potential for moving our muscles and processing sensory information. So, like our energy is used to make us live, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. Convert we convert matter into energy. That's the food that we eat, the air that we breathe, like the sunlight that we receive. We take in various energy inputs, mostly via food. We convert that into energy. We use that energy to move around, to do things around in the world around us. Okay. So when we do that, a byproduct of that energy is heat. So we're not necessarily manufacturing heat in a way we kind of are, but that is a byproduct that happens as the energy is being manufactured in our living bodies. But when we die, that production stops. And so, because the production stops, the heat essentially dissipates. That's where some of the energy that was in our body where it goes because
Right.
it is no longer generating heat. What production there was dissipates because we're not continuing to feed the furnace, if you will. And then our lifeless bodies become cold. Actually, they become room temperature, but compared to what a human normally feels like, it feels cold. Um,
Sure.
so now some of the energy does remain, but that's energy that's largely holding our bodies together, right? The energy is stored in all materials in the entire world, in the entire universe that have mass by holding those materials together. And this is why when we break or burn materials, that energy that is holding them together is then converted into heat again and escapes out into the ambient air. When I burn a piece of wood, what is happening is there is a chemical reaction essentially that is breaking the bonds that hold that wood together and converting it into particles that are small, and they sort of dissipate as heat, and some of them will remain in very small little chunks we call ash that are so light that they'll float around and will further break down over time, and the energy then gets converted into other things like when it passes into the soil. And so it doesn't what it doesn't ever do when heat is converted from one, or when energy is converted from one form into another, particularly heat, is it does not coalesce into a sentient entity. That would not make any sense. Like, it's like when you release gas, any kind of gas into a room. Let's just say a fart because it's fun. If you fart into a room, it doesn't
Yeah.
usually form a solid mass that can then move around and do things. It will spread out to fill all the available air. And heat's going to do about the same thing. Of course, it's subject to air currents that are in the room, but it's mostly going to just spread out. It'll get absorbed by some things. It'll probably move through some areas where there are currents, but it's just going to sort of dissipate into the environment in which it finds itself.
Yeah. I do also, I think it's fun to think of a fart as a butt ghost, but
Sure.
that's because we're both mature adults. I think that's like we're both doctors, and butt ghost is very funny to think about. When
Yeah.
you said tiny bits of ash earlier, I thought you were going to say tiny bits of ads.
Nice.
Thanks.
Very good. Okay, so as we're talking about, we're sort of unpacking the fact that like one hypothesis here is that our bodies have energy. When we die, the energy coalesces into a ghost thing, I guess. Most of it's still holding our body together. Some of it just dissipates as heat, but whatever. Let's pretend that we could convert for some reason that energy does coalesce into some kind of mass.
Right. So even if that heat could converge into a sentient entity, into a mass of energy that for some reason wears clothes, for some reason looks like us, and somehow manages to continue to execute our bodily functions without a body, like movement, processing sensory information, speaking, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That mass then would still not be able to do some of the things that ghosts are purported to do. Energy does not easily transfer through other materials such as walls. Energy does not independently move through space on a whim. That's just not how it works. Like on a biological physics level, it does not work like this.
Yeah, so even if the like someone was trying to argue from physics that ghosts could exist, they wouldn't do what ghosts do because of all of these reasons. And again, no reason to think that our that energy would look like it was wearing clothes again, unless our clothes also have spirits that's like somehow linked to our spirit. It doesn't make any sense. And then the clothes are like sitting on us. It's not like they were ever alive to begin with. Where is their energy supposed to have gone since it's still holding the fabric together?
Right.
Also, let's consider the fact that 70 to 90% of the cells in our body are made of bacteria. Just in case you didn't already know that, fun
Mm-hmm.
fact to ruin your day. Yes,
Uh-huh.
we are more of a symbiotic relationship with a microbiome than we are ourselves, because so
That's
much of
wild.
us is a microbiome. So, where do those go when we become ghosts? Because a lot of them just stay in the cells in our body. Why would they escape? So our ghost would then would then our ghost be 10% of us because of the microbiome that's left behind? Like I don't like this does just it doesn't make any sense.
I do like the idea of a ghost amoeba though. And how somebody would study that. Like they'd have to like get a microscope that could pick up ghost like little ghost like just little
Yeah,
like gooey
there's
things. That's fun.
ghost bacteria all over the place.
Yeah, that's fun. So let's pretend that ghosts are some spirit materials that is not even energy, just some incorporeal substance that makes up our consciousness. that would rule out things without consciousness, such as vehicles, right? So, like, if it is consciousness come to life through energy and like living whatever, then vehicles couldn't be ghosts. But
Right.
also, how does a substance fit into the universe? What's it made out of? Can it be destroyed? If it's not made or destroyed, then how are new people born? Because matter is a whole thing. New people must get this life force from somewhere, and it seems unlikely that it's recycled ghosts. That would be really horrible if we were just recycled ghosts. That would be really wild if there was like a finite number of spirits and we just were recycling them forever. That's wild.
Yeah.
So it must be made of this substance. It must be made of. It must be made, and if it is made, then it must come from somewhere. Whence does it come? There's no reason to believe that such a thing has, does, or ever will exist. And a lot of times, what you'll see is like they'll talk about like protoplasm or ectoplasm. Like it's like some of the terms that you'll hear paranormal investigators use, which is just basically
Sure.
like a fancy word for slime.
Yeah. But again, slime is made out of matter. So where did that matter come from? Where does it go? What are
Right.
its components? What chemically is it like doing? And so anyway, like there's and again, there's also the fact that like this has never actually been documented anywhere ever by anyone in any circumstance. So like
Right.
whatever substance there seems to be, it's not a substance and not one that we've interacted with in a way that was meaningful. Okay,
Right.
that's all the sort of physical aspect of this. So it doesn't make sense to try and lean on physics in any aspect of this or any sense of reality or the natural sciences because it just doesn't make any sense. Let's talk to our sort of the mental aspect of this because part of the idea of these ghosts is that they seem to have intention. They seem to be doing things in some capacity, which means that they're interacting with things in some capacity. Now, let's start with the fact that our minds, what our mind is, that's essentially the name we give to the activity of our brain that allows us to form a cohesive narrative picture about our experiences. That's pretty much it. Without a
Right.
brain, there is no mind. You kill the brain, you kill the mind. The mind is the activity of the brain. It's not something separate from that. That's really important. It is that. It is the activity of
Right.
the brain. If the brain stops working, the idea of ghosts that somehow, or if the brain stops working, the idea here is that ghosts somehow have mental functions of the brain that carry on. And
Hmm.
and let's go back to the fact that again, we interact with the visual aspects of life because light enters our eyeballs, stimulates the nerves on the back of our retinas that connect to the neurons in our brains.
Right.
Um, how does one do that without an eyeball? Part of the nature of the eyeball is the fact that it is actually a dark place with one little aperture for light to get through. So if you had a transparent or translucent eyeball, light would just pass right through it. It couldn't even stimulate the nerves, supposing they somehow managed to exist. So vision ghosts seem to be something that they would have to lack. When sounds happen, that's just vibrations in the air that essentially move our eardrum and the bones behind our eardrum and our inner ear, stimulates fluid and neurons, which again connect to the neurons in our brain. How would that work if we don't have matter, which those air follicles can be stimulated or can stimulate, so that it could then be interpreted as sound? Like our sound doesn't exist to a brain that doesn't exist. It exists to us because we have brains. And of course, if we weren't here, like air could still vibrate and it would still technically be sound, but we would not be perceiving it as such. So, how does it work if we don't have matter that we could interact with the world? Perhaps ghosts are just floating around completely imperceptible to anything that's going on around them because they don't have mass, they can't feel touch, because they don't have any sensory organs or connected to a brain, so they can't perceive sights or sounds or images or temperature or anything like that. So, like, if there is one, like, what would the mechanism be by which the mind would transfer to lack of material when the mind is just the activity of that material? Like, doesn't make any sense.
Right. Right. Exactly. Now, another question that comes up is, can ghosts die? Which, you might be going, well, that's redundant, Shane. Well,
I would think so.
here's the thing. I mean, I think it's a good question, right? So they aren't alive, so it seems they couldn't die. But apparently they come into existence, as some people believe, and we have yet to discover anything that comes into existence that doesn't die just in our natural world. Not humans, not animals, not even stars or galaxies. Everything that comes to be ceases to be at some point in time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. At some point, it stops. It just stops. It no longer is. All right. So if ghosts don't die, then there is an implication here, which is what role would ghosthood serve in the evolution or nature just more broadly? Like, this wouldn't further the existence of a species. It wouldn't aid in the tendency of the physical world toward entropy. It would not meaningfully impact anything in nature at all. So, what purpose would this have? Why would something like this come to exist? In billions of years, when our planet has been swallowed by the sun and humans have been gone for a long time because Trump
Hopefully
destroyed
sooner.
our species, and there are just would there just be billions of ghosts floating around the cosmic ruins that used to be our planet? Why? To what end? Like, what kind of experience is this? Um, and if they can die, how did they come into existence how does it go from like coming into existence to going out of existence, and where does it go if a ghost can die? So again, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
And yeah, and so you asked, even if they could die, how? What would that even mean? And could a ghost turn into a ghost itself? Are there ghosts of ghosts? Are there
Right.
layers of ghosts? There's a really great short story by Kurt Vonnegut called Thanatosphere, and it's about like the space race and how they're starting to kind of like begin the space race, but they discover that when they get into space, it's full of ghosts. And it's like a really
That's
great,
pretty
it's a
good.
really great story. Like it's because they start communing with the dead and all that. So it's a really good, but it's like very tongue in cheek. It's like written as like a letter, an official government letter being from a doctor going like, we shouldn't be doing this.
Right, right, right. Sure.
It's pretty
That's
good.
fun.
So bonus recommendation for everybody here. If you like Kurt Vonnegut and you want to read that short story, it's fun. It's a good Halloween read.
Nice. All right. Well, so we had mentioned that we would eventually talk about ghost psychology. I feel like I mean, there's so many reasons that ghosts just don't make any sense. Like they couldn't possibly exist. It's one of those things where it's like it's so wrong that even if it was right, it would still be wrong. Level of wrong, like it's just
Sure.
utter nonsense. And we'll circle back around to this a bit in the past, but let's go ahead and fulfill on our promise to actually talk about ghosts as it relates to psychology. After unfortunately we haunt you with some ads.
Ooh.
Not my best segue, I think.
No, that was good. I like it. I like it. It worked.
Okay, so we have been justifying why we think that ghosts don't exist, or why we have reason to believe that we're so confident in the fact that they don't exist that we could just as reasonably say we know they don't exist, because all the things I know to be true have as much evidence as there is against the existence of ghosts. But let's talk about ghost psychology, nevertheless.
Yeah. So some polls report that anywhere from 40 to 60% of Americans believe in ghosts. I'm not shocked, but
You're not.
you know,
That seems high to me.
that's why I'm not shocked because if you watch any politics right now, then you're like it's a lot of people who believe in ghosts. Now, the 60% number comes from data aggregated in 2024, so we may be on an increase.
Yeah, the majority of the polls that I found said 41%. I saw that number over and over and over again. But then I saw this 2024 study that said 60%. And I'm like, that, what? Is this
Sure.
a sample bias problem here or what's going on?
Wild.
So maybe they just did that last poll just in Florida where they've burned all the books and people don't know things anymore.
That's probably exactly where they got that information from.
All right. Well, in other countries, people also believe in ghosts. In 2017, a poll found that 33% of British citizens believe in ghosts, although they also reported that another 21% said that they weren't sure. So if if saying maybe ghosts exist is on the level of ghosts exist, then they're closer to 54%, but maybe it's somewhere close to that 40%. So it's not terribly different, really, from what the United States is looking like.
But you would think that if ghosts existed with the long history of Britain and the Isles, you would imagine that there would be a lot more ghosts. Like
Right?
you would
You would
believe
think
like
so.
you would think that there would be so many more sightings there. Just because of the amount of people that have died there, especially folks that died in the bear baiting. arenas. Like they would be haunting Shakespearean plays,
Yeah, they would outnumber people, I think.
and they would be in the crowd going, "This is unbearable."
They might be
You know, because
saying
they were killed by bears.
boo.
I would like that too. I would support that. I do like negative critic ghosts. Those are great ghosts. So there was also a study that showed that only 7% of the Dutch people reported believing in ghosts. So there's that too.
Now, there was also sort of some interest. A lot of psychologists were trying to understand essentially the characteristics of the people who believe in ghosts and sort of unpacking what you might infer from, I guess, people who report believing in ghosts. So there was this 2022 study by Dean and colleagues, and they reviewed 71 psychological studies of paranormal beliefs. Oh, and that covered about 40 years of studies involving almost 21,000 participants. And they report
Wow.
several features of people with paranormal beliefs, sort of generally. So this is not necessarily isolated to ghosts, but paranormal beliefs, which it could include ghosts.
Right.
And so one of the things they found is that people with stronger beliefs in paranormal ideas also tend to also tend to score higher on things like extroversion. So they tend to be a little bit more on the social side, but they also tended to score higher on neuroticism.
Hmm. Interesting. So education is negatively correlated with lower belief in paranormal in general, but depends on the field. So people in the natural sciences have the lowest rates of belief, while theology, arts, and education were more likely to believe in supernatural concepts.
I think that I actually wrote that wrong too, because it would be negatively correlated with beliefs, not lower beliefs, because that would
Oh,
imply
sure, sure,
that the
sure.
correlation, yeah, but which makes a lot of sense. Essentially, people who are more educated less likely to believe in ghosts, particularly when they're in the natural sciences. People who are more educated but not in the natural sciences might be more inclined to believe in ghosts than people who are in the natural sciences, but maybe less so than people who have less education more generally, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Now, there were some studies that found that like you could reliably associate belief in ghosts with one gender more than another, but they're really mixed. They're inconsistent in how they correlate with belief in ghosts. So it seems like it's probably split fairly 50-50. Um, and age is another one where it was kind of inconsistent and kind of mixed, but it did tend to skew a bit that people who were younger were more likely to believe in ghosts than people who were older and who would arguably be hanging out with more ghosts. But, it's the young people are a bit easier to persuade of supernatural things sometimes.
I think that makes sense. Um, one of my this is probably I don't think anybody here listening is going to be surprised by this, but I also think it's important to say out loud because you need to know. People who believe in conspiracies are correlated with lower educational attainment, reduced analytics thinking, a tendency toward confirmation and hindsight bias, increased illusory pattern perception, and are more likely to believe in ghosts. So if you know somebody who's a conspiracy theorist, they are very, very, very likely to believe in ghosts as well.
Yes, they actually did. If there's anything positive they have going for them, which we hope so, because their lives are bleak. But if
Yes.
there's anything positive going on, some of the research suggests they might have slightly better memories than average, but that they score a little higher on like those aspects of some of these psychological tests. But they're
Right.
they're pretty gullible. They tend to kind of believe in anything that is not what's right in front of their nose.
Sure.
The opposite of how most of us are, where we tend to believe things that are right in front of our nose.
Right, right, right.
So there were some neurologists who were interested in learning more about sort of ghost perception and ghost beliefs and that sort of thing. And so in a 2014 study, these neurologists put participants in a brain scanner and they showed them videos of just sort of simple actions with some basic shapes. I kind of got the impression the shapes were maybe a little ambiguous, a little blurry, as if they were
A
maybe
little
watching
ghosty.
a, yeah, it's a little ghosty. And essentially what they sort of asked them about the movements. And people who are more inclined toward paranormal beliefs were much more likely to assign intention and motivation to the shapes. And had greater activation in the parts of their brain believed to be involved in theory of mind, which is to say, they were sort of interpreting this to mean that they were the theory of mind aspect meant that they were looking at those shapes and interpreting them as the behavior of others, trying to sort of predict their behavior, understand their behavior, and so they specifically, some of them even noted that it looked like the shapes were playing tag. It was just random movements. It was literally random movements, but they ascribed meaning and motivation to those movements if they were already more likely to believe in sort of paranormal things.
Sure.
Those same people were also more likely to see like quote unquote hidden faces in mundane photos that didn't actually contain hidden faces. So they'd show them a picture and they'd be like, "Oh, I see the face," and like there's not actually a face there, but these people are sort of they're inclined toward pattern seeking. They're trying to find something, and us
Right.
humans are very good at finding faces in pretty much anything. There's a lot of research on that, so you could look at anything really and find a face somewhere. Matter of fact, I encourage you to try it right now, assuming you're not driving. But if you can, like, look around, see if you can find a face in something around you. I'd be willing to bet that you can do it. And these people were more likely to do that, like basically as a snap judgment without necessarily um, anything to orient to there.
It's really upsetting that you just asked everybody to do that, and even I did it. I started looking around my because I'm in a hotel room right now. I started looking around. It's like, and then I found one. I was like, oh, there it is. And it's my AirPod case.
Oh,
So,
okay. The face in the
um,
hotel room.
ooh, so scary. And I'm in Canada, so who knows what kind of scary is up here.
That's right.
So,
Cold ghosts.
um, cold ghosts. So everybody has a winter jacket on. Every ghost does at least.
That's right.
So in general, paranormal believers tend to lack what researchers described as cognitive inhibition, which is the ability to weed out the knee-jerk, reactive, conspiratorial thoughts that we might have, and instead critically think about events. We talked about cognitive miserliness as well
Right.
in the last episode, and it's kind of in the
This is
same world, right?
Yeah, it's basically the same idea here.
It's the
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah. So they think about their dad, and then their dad calls a minute later. And instead of recognizing that this is a coincidence, they start imagining the hidden forces that compelled this mythical connection. It's kind of like when people talk about like that, it's that old saying where people are like, "Are your ears burning? Somebody's talking about you." It's like, or maybe you have an infection. Like you should get that looked at.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly that. It's that they see coincidence as causal. Like there are coincidences in the world. If there weren't, I would be inclined toward paranormal beliefs because it does not
Sure.
make sense statistically that coincidences would not happen. But coincidences do happen because we live in a normal, deterministic regular universe that doesn't do fantastical mythical things, sad as that may be. And so for those of us, when something like that happens, we sort of shrug it off as, oh, that's kind of a funny coincidence. Oh, well, ho hum, go about my day. But then
Sure.
there are those people who are like, hold on, stop everything. Something coincidental just happened. A gnome did it. And so they start looking for the gnome or the
Synchronicities.
yeah. They start looking for the cause and ascribing meaning to it. Like it couldn't possibly have been random chance. It had to have been God. It couldn't
Sure.
possibly have been a coincidence. It had to have been a ghost. Like that's where their mind goes. And some of us might even have that initial thought, like, that was really strange. A ghost. What I wonder if that was a ghost. And then we stop ourselves and go, no, that's silly. That's really not how things work. And then we discover often the reason for what happened. And that's the inhibition piece, is that we sort of catch ourselves when we start to delve into the nonsense loop.
Right.
But a lot of these people who lack that inhibition, they don't. They just follow it down the rabbit hole as far as they can.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll go to the sixth one. um, boop. Now we have sort of been. I think we have been objective in how we have relayed the information of research here in this part of the discussion so far.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I think it's also worth pointing out that like it does sound like we're being very harsh on ghost beliefs, and we kind of are. So let's also turn to the fact that researchers have also pointed out that people who do have belief in the paranormal do have an advantage that can be positively influenced by their beliefs, which is that their gullibility can be used as an effective tool. For example, they will actually perform better if they are carrying something they believe to be a lucky charm. If they actually believes that it will bring them luck, they will do better. It's very much like on the Harry Potter movie. I forget which one it is, um, but Harry Potter gives Ron the sort of the magical stuff that is supposed to bring luck, the liquid luck.
Yes, 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 yes.
He didn't actually give it to him, but he believed that he had gotten it. So then he went out and performed super well, and like that is an effect that can happen from people who are inclined to believe such things. If you believe that there is real luck imbued in this mundane object, you might actually manifest the luck in your real life, or you might, at the very least, find the silver lining in things that are going on around you. You say, look at that and be like, that doesn't strike me as lucky, but I have my lucky amulet here. I bet this happened for a good reason. And then they sort of go about their day in this sort of positive light. So there can be this sort of quote unquote advantage of delusion.
I also feel like the word amulet is an underused word.
Fair, yeah. It's a good word.
So yeah, it's a really good word. Okay, so the last little section here that we want to kind of talk about is this idea of why. Why does this happen? Why ghosts? And that's really the question we're trying to answer. And there is a really fascinating thing going on here. So there's something called haunted person syndrome or HPS. And this is when someone has recurring reports of paranormal experiences. These tend to run in families, but platonically, not genetically. So it's not passed down like along bloodlines. It's like a shared feature of like group think almost. And that is
Yes.
kind of like the idea is that the people are more likely to believe in paranormal if their families believe in paranormal. So like if their group, their communities believe in paranormal activities, then you're gonna have a higher rate of paranormal belief in that area.
Community is a good way to put it rather than family because yeah, it's if they grew up in apart from their
Salem.
family. If they grew up in Salem, if they grew up apart from their family in a community that did not endorse those beliefs, then they're not as likely to believe in them. But they are likely to believe in them if they're in a community, including their family, who does, which makes a lot of sense. So
Right.
there is a shared cultural through line, if you will, where it is passed down to subsequent generations, as long as those can remain somewhat contained, or at least the contact among them remains intact for a long time.
Sure.
So, anyway, haunted person syndrome is a thing. Okay. We talked about this with cryptids, but ghosts and other aspects of human bias, they exist in this zone of ambiguity in human sensation, which is it's the senses that we like get just on the peripheral of what we're able to actually experience. A touch, a movement out of the corner of our eye, a sound we're not totally sure that we heard. It's those like levels of ambiguity. Our senses
Mhm.
are pretty good for what they are. Some animals are better at many of them than we are. But at least for what they are, our senses are pretty good, but they can't detect everything. We wouldn't be able to survive if they did. They're sort of limited in what we can detect, what we can see, hear, smell, taste, and feel is somewhat limited. But nevertheless, they're fairly decent. But that means that some things will just barely be on the threshold of stimulating, where we're really not able to meaningfully interpret what that thing was. And that's the sort of zone of ambiguity where things sort of exist. And it is a way, when those things happen, ghosts can sort of be a way for us to put patterns and meanings onto things when we couldn't easily slot them into the category of known sensations, right?
Sure.
So I hear something that I couldn't quite figure out what it was. It's easy to go ambiguous thing. I think I heard could be a ghost. It could be something else, but it could be a ghost. And like, because if I hear something that's like really clear, like I turn on my coffee grinder, I hear the coffee grinder, I'm not thinking, I wonder if that's a ghost making that noise. At least I hope
Right,
not.
right,
Because like I'm there, I'm very clearly interacting with the source of stimulation. But if it comes from somewhere else, I'm like sort of just barely picking up on it. That is I can't necessarily put it in the bucket of things I know what they are, and so that
right.
makes it easier to superimpose meaning on top of it when I'm unclear. When we hear a sound, we can't determine what made the sound. So the sort of sequence goes like this: we hear a sound. We're not totally sure what that sound is. We assign agency to that sound as we sort of assume it must have been caused by something. Then we try and fill in the gaps by presuming what could have been the cause. And I sort of found a fun story I was looking up. This is by someone who reportedly does not believe in ghosts. But for some reason, they were out in a cabin by themselves, sort of in a remote area, maybe camping or something adjacent to camping, because to me, camping is always in a tent and a sleeping bag. But
Right.
they're out in the woods, sort of remote, and they hear this thump in the middle of the night, and it scared them. They didn't know what it was, and they heard another thump a little while later, and I think they even said they woke up, and then they were outside the next morning, and they heard that thump again, and they went to go try and investigate what it was, and then they found that there was an apple tree nearby, and the apples were landing on the ground. The wind
Sure.
blew them down, and it fell, and it went thump, and they're like, that was the exact sound that I heard. But in the middle of the night, we don't know what that sound is, and so the thought we have is something moved and made a thump sound. A monster, a person, a ghost, whatever, and made a thump
Right.
sound. But the reality was an apple dropped because apples drop. That's a thing that they do.
Who'd have thought Newton would have shown up in this episode, you know?
Should have billboarded that at the top. Be like,
Uh,
what does Newton have in common with ghosts?
and here we are. My favorite state, extreme stress, that absolutely can lead to some things that might be ghost related. So extreme stress, chaotic experiences can result in hallucinations or jumping to supernatural explanations. Because basically people are trying to make sense of a chaotic world, of things that don't make sense, of things that have to have a reason, right? It's kind of like when God is behind the storm that just leveled a city, right? They go,
Right.
there has to be a reason. It can't just be as simple as this storm did this thing. Right. And so there is a little bit of like kind of magical thinking that goes along with this too, that like people just kind of wish that there was more of a reason for behind kind of the chaos that is the world around us.
Yeah, exactly. Why did this happen to me? There must be something out there that has it out for me. There must be some entity who can control this, who is targeting me for some reason or another, for good or for ill. And it, as you said, like we're trying to understand what are these, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? And an easy thing we can turn to is supernatural things that don't follow the rules, because it shouldn't have happened to me because I'm a good person and it did. So something supernatural is breaking the rules to target me specifically. And even when it's not exactly that kind of linear thought, I think you can sort of see the pattern I'm getting at by talking about the idea of I need to assign agency to a thing that is turned my life upside down. What is this? Why is this happening to me? And the reality is that shitty things happen, and it's hard to predict when and why and how they happen. Um, and
Right.
and that's essentially why we have ads.
Oh. That was good. I wasn't
Thank
ready
you.
for that.
All right, so we're sort of wrapping up here our overall discussion. A lot of what I found in looking at the sort of psychology of this here is it is a lot of this. It's the sort of motivated reasoning, people trying to make sense out of chaos going on. But there's also some like other things that people turn to where you'll hear the yeah buts when people come out of the woodwork and say, okay, yeah, sure, that all makes sense. But what about people who like have out of body experiences? They die or they take some drug or they are unconscious for a minute and they report going out of their body. And the reality is like it is kind of well documented at this point. I mean, kind of, and well documented is sort of an oxymoron. There is some actual evidence to show that, like, neurologically, we are still active in these moments where we're reporting out of body experiences, and we can almost pinpoint now what parts of the brain are likely to be active when we then later report an out of body experience. Like, we're getting there.
Sure.
We're getting there. And so we're clear that like that is a phenomenon that someone can have. But importantly, are we actually leaving our body? And there's some people I think put together a pretty clever experiment. There was a place where people there was reportings of people who would like die, leave their body, they would float up above the room, and then eventually would come back. And so they would have this sort of bird's eye view of the room that they're in. And like, how are they doing that if they're not actually leaving their body? And so these experimenters are like, okay, well, let's put some envelopes or some like letters on top of the shelves in this room where we can't see them. Matter of fact, you may not even know that they're there. And they'll have some large font messages written on them. And we'll ask you to just tell us, what did we write on that envelope? And then when that person returns to their body, assuming they actually left their body, they'd be able to say what was on those things that was clearly visible when they were floating out and above the room. And
Right.
so people floated out of their bodies out into space, looking down on the room, couldn't tell you what was on the envelopes. So
Right.
again, there's like very much like a dream. Like in a dream, you can see yourself in third person. In a dream, things can happen in a sort of what weird way where you were seeing a twisted or some version of a world that you once knew or that you do know. I mean, all bets are off, really. A dream can be anything. And it seems like that. People have this experience where they're like, have enough information to reconstruct this sort of simulated reality, but they're not actually leaving their bodies. They're just not.
Right.
And again, the research has borne this out, and they were like, "This is a pretty simple experiment we can do. If you're leaving the body, you should be able to get information that you wouldn't otherwise have." That seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And so, like, we'll just measure that, and lo and behold, no one could do it.
Right. And that makes perfect sense. And another reason that ghosts tend to persist is, we kind of talk about this on the cryptids episode where, some people have oral traditions that involve spirits and spiritualism and all that stuff. But really, truthfully, when we get to the simple nuts and bolts of it, is ghost stories are kind of fun. It's
Yeah,
kind of fun exploring the unknown or the unexplainable and leaving people with a sense of curiosity and thought and even maybe a little bit of a thrill around, this place is haunted. So like we're going in here and we may see something and kind of like setting these really interesting expectations around certain experiences, certain stories, certain times of year, and I think, at the end of the day, just ghost stories are generally a very fun thing.
yeah, we have been deconstructing the idea of ghosts and the fact that they aren't even plausible. But I wouldn't want ghost stories to stop happening. They're really fun. They're entertaining. Like I
Right.
enjoy the video games and the movies and the books and the music. Like please keep talking about ghosts. Let's keep the mythology of it alive. We
Right.
just don't need to pretend that they're real. But I really enjoy the stories about them. So like I'm not at all trying to take this away. I don't hate ghosts. I don't hate people who believe in ghosts, but
Right.
they're just not real. And nevertheless, we find so much joy in the sort of tradition that comes from these ideas. And I love the mythology to sort of persist in a creative endeavor sort of way. So
Right.
I just want to sort of leave it with that, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a good place to leave it.
Okay, great. So anyway, that's why people believe in ghosts. That's what ghosts are. That's why ghosts aren't. And now, I warned Shane that I was gonna throw him a curveball, and that is we're gonna play a real quick game here.
Love games.
And you can sort of see the game here. We're gonna play the game where we're gonna try and list movies, not TV shows, that have ghost or ghosts in the title of the movie, and we're gonna go back and forth until one person can't answer or we repeat someone else's answer and
Oh
see how
man,
many we can
okay.
get. So I did not look any up because I wanted this. I obviously wrote the game in here, so I knew that it was happening, but I haven't really been trying to conjure any. So we'll see how we do. We might not get very far, but I'm curious. So Shane, you get. Do you want me to start or do you want to start?
You can start. Since you
Okay.
since you came with a game, yeah, you can start.
All right. Ghost.
I knew it. Ghostbusters.
Ghost Rider.
Ghost Ship.
We have a ghost.
Uh, Ghost in the Shell.
The go ooh, the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, does that count?
Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Ghostbusters 2.
Oh man. Let's see. Ghost Dad.
Oh, nice. Oh no, I might be out. Hold on. I know people are yelling at their speakers right now
Yeah.
with a lot, many suggestions. I know there's so
Yeah.
many, and I'm just not even think of it.
Yeah.
Did you
You
say
know what's funny
ghost?
is,
Did you say ghost ship already?
yeah, I did say Ghost Ship. Yeah.
Ah, damn it. All right, I lose.
That was fun. I was racking my brain and I literally could not think of like any other ghost movies. And it's unfortunate that Ghost Dad is the thing that won it for me.
Oh, there was a movie called Ghost Story. I didn't even think about that.
Oh man.
That would have been easy. Come on.
There's yeah, let's see what else is out there. Movies with ghosts in the title. Because I feel like there's so many. Ghost is
Ghost in
all
the
around.
Machine. I thought about that, but I was like, no, I'm thinking of Ghost in the Shell. But Ghost in the Machine is a real word, so okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, I think Ghost in the Machine. Yeah, oh, no, there's Ghosted, Ghost in the Shell, the Ghost in
Blackbeard's
the
Ghost.
Darkness.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so many.
Ghost Rider Spirit of
Um,
Vengeance.
let's see, Chronicles of the
Sure.
Ghostly Tide. Uh-huh.
Oh, Mission Impossible Ghost
Ghost Light,
Protocol.
Mater in the Ghost Light.
Man,
Oh, that'd have been good too. Ghost
I love
World.
Mission
Oh my God,
Impossible.
Ghost World is great too.
The Ghost Train, the Ghost Rider.
Oh
Okay. Well,
yeah, there's so many.
there's a lot. All right.
The
Hopefully we
Ghost
assuage
Breakers, which is a
some.
1940 movie.
Did not see that one. All right. Well, that was fun. Anyway, talking to that we did
Nope, nope, no, no.
list ghosts. So, or
Yeah,
movies
that was
about
good. That was good. Thank you
ghosts.
for that.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Hopefully, people at listening were able to play along a little bit and have some fun with that. And if we forgot any more, then you should reach out and tell us. As a matter of fact,
Yes.
let's go ahead and transition to our wrap up here, which we are going to recommend some things. And if you're joining us for the first time, we just at the end of every episode make some recommendations. Sometimes they're related to our topic, sometimes not. I do think that ours this week are like tangentially related in that they're horror adjacent, so sort of Halloweeny, if you will. But otherwise, our recommendations are just recommendations, and I think this week's just happens to kind of be a coincidence, a real coincidence, not a ghost-inspired coincidence.
That's true.
Um, but before we get to all of that, I need to read the credits, which is to say, if you like what you heard today and you would like to support us, you can join us on Patreon. There, you'll get access to ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, all this behind-the-scenes content. And for the wonderful people over there, I will read your name for being one of our faithful, loyal, awesome supporters, which includes Mike M, Megan, Mike T, Justin, Kim, Joshua, Brad, Stephanie, Olivia, Brian, Ashley, Kiara, and Michelle. Thank you all so much. We so appreciate you sticking with
Yay.
us all this time. You are the best. Of course, writing and fact checking from Shane, myself, and Katie is joining the team as a writer. So happy to have her aboard. Our social media coordinator is Emma Wilson, and the person making all of the audio sound like good stuff is Justin Greenhouse, who is amazing. Thank you, Justin.
Yep, we love y'all.
All right. If there's anything, is there anything that I forgot or anything you would like to add before we transition to recommendations?
No, I feel good.
All right. You can kick off our recommendations this week.
All right. So, I'm going to recommend a video game, and it is Mortal Kombat. But it's the newest Mortal Kombat 1, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
I have that.
the expansion pack called Chaos Reigns.
Oh, okay.
So the story, the Mortal Kombat 1 storyline is basically they've reset all the timelines.
Okay.
And in spoiler alert on this, for those of you who, I mean, this game's been out for over a year. So, the spoiler alert for anybody who wants to play it. Um, The end of the game, the end of the of like kind of the game proper is that you discover that there are multiple timelines that exist simultaneously with
Sure.
multiple titans, and they're all the titans are like the character that kind of governs that timeline, and they're all
Okay.
different versions of like the Mortal Kombat characters. So it
Okay.
ends with a character named Havoc, the Titan Havoc, coming in, and his whole thing is like he just loves anarchy. And
Mm.
so the Chaos Reigns expansion pack is Havoc, the Titan Havoc comes in and he's just causing a mess. And so you have to stop him from merging all the timelines into pure anarchy and pure chaos. It's a lot of fun. It's a really quick play at the end of it, but it's a lot of fun. And you get bonus characters. You get
Ooh,
so because they always have expansion packs that have all these characters, you get Ermac, you get Cyrax and Sector, you get Noob Saibot in this expansion pack, and then you get the T-1000 from Terminator 2.
cool.
You get Conan the Barbarian,
Nice.
and you get Ghostface from
Oh,
Scream.
cool. Wow.
Yeah. On
Okay.
top of the fact that you've already got Homelander, Omni-Man, and Peacemaker as additional characters in it too.
Right. I saw that they had added those, some comic book
Yeah.
characters. It's really cool.
Very ridiculous.
Okay, very good. And I know that they have this on Switch, and I believe this is also on like PlayStation, or is this
Yes,
like
it's
across
better on
platforms?
everything else. It's better on everything else than Switch. It looks better on everything else but Switch, but
That is what
I
I've
play
heard.
it on the Switch.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Mortal Kombat 1 Chaos Reigns expansion. I'm recommending a movie. It is from, I think, 10 years ago or so. I could be wrong. I don't know. But it's called Till Death, starring Megan Fox and a bunch of people I'd never heard of before, but she's sort of the main character. Not sort of, she's definitely the main character. And so, without spoiling a lot about this, this is a horror movie. And it didn't get the greatest ratings, but I found it really enjoyable. Like, all the characters' motivations made sense to me. It was one of those where you're often watching thinking, like, why would you do that? That's so dumb. And I didn't have that moment in this. Like everything they did made sense to me and sort of
Sure.
like the writing felt good and like I don't know, I just thought it was an enjoyable movie. I think that probably some people have a problem with the fact that as it gets to the end, you start to reach the sort of the final resolution and the movie just kind of ends without showing that part, but it's like you also kind of just know what it's going to be, so it wouldn't add very much. And that also keeps the movie at sort of a tight hour and a half. So
Right.
it's a nice quick one. You can go in and watch. It's on Netflix at the time that we are recording this, so maybe it'll still be there by the time you go to watch it. But yeah, if you this is probably not kid friendly movie, and does deal with. It does deal with suicide, so if that's not something you're comfortable watching, then I would sit that one out. But if you're down and interested in looking for horror movies and you have not already watched it, or if you'd like to watch it again, Till Death, I actually thought was pretty good.
No, and I'm adding it to my list because I haven't watched any scary movies this season for some
Oh,
reason. So
get on that. Get on
I
that.
know. I know. I'm working on it.
If you would like to tell us about ghosts or movies with ghost in the title, or things about ghosts, or movies or video games or anything else, we love hearing from people. You can email us by writing us directly at info@www.wwdpodcast.com. You can also reach us on the social media platforms after the same string of initials. And we do have some stuff on YouTube. We publish a weekly full length episode every Wednesday and some short 15-minute deep dive, what we call minis, on Mondays. Mini Mondays. I didn't think about that, but that's fun. You can find
I like
us
that.
there. And if you subscribe, then that makes sure that we always show up in your feed and you can check out whatever we've got going on that week or that day, as it were. And then periodically we will release some nostalgia episodes where we replay an old episode and then add some updated commentary to that discussion. But we only do a few of those a year, like, I don't know, maybe seven, eight, something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so, anyway, those are ways that you can find us. But I think I've said all the things. I appreciate you, everyone who listened with us today. Thank you. Or yeah, that was those are words. Thank you for listening. Thank you for recording with me today, Shane. Is there anything else you'd like to add or that I forgot before we say our goodbyes?
Nope, I think that covers it.
All right, boo. This is Abraham.
And it's Shane.
We're out.
See ya. Boo. I like that.
Cool. That was fun. I told Justin, I was like, all right, so we got the episode recorded and it's all up there, and he said, well, let me pull up his text. You must be punishing me for something I did.
Oh, poor Justin.
For like 3 weeks in a row, getting him the episode like 2 days
We're
before it publishes.
sorry, Justin. We'll make it up to
Sorry.
you, I promise.
Cool.
All right,
Um,
I am exported and ready for the mini.
my export is still running, so it'll take me just a moment here.
Oh, well, while we do that, we can end this recording for patrons.
That is true. Bye, patrons.
Bye, patrons.